Clouds had become the new savanna long before Lyra was born. When the seas boiled off under a century of fever heat, water retreated into the troposphere, churning in colossal, silvered banks that never quite condensed into rain. That was where the sky whales rose from the last warm oceans, driven by an instinct no scientist ever decoded. Their fins stretched wider than pre-collapse stadiums. Their skins shimmered with nacreous cilia that filtered vapor through cavernous gills, and within the soft pockets along their undersides grew lakes large enough to drown a village. Humanity, refusing extinction, learned to live upside down, building bamboo hammocks, rope bridges, and turbine nests across those alabaster bellies. Whole clans dangled in the wind, sowing algae in translucent pools, while the whales drifted from horizon to horizon, harvesting clouds as slowly and steadily as ancient whales once sifted krill. In the open sky there were no borders, only the faint rainbow traces of moisture, and far below, the iron scars of continents abandoned to dust. Lyra's earliest memory was of tottering across a tension cable strung between two rib vents of the matriarch whale, Siyun. She and the other Kraysh children crawled beneath luminous skin that throbbed with the whoosh of oxygenated vapor, the heartbeat of their floating world. Adults labored above them, checking the algae farms that spiraled like emerald tattoos across the whale's belly, moving carefully so the beast would not buck. Whenever Siyun breached a thick cumulus, sheets of condensed water rained through the vent channels and hammered against woven cistern drums. The sound reverberated as festival music. Evenings were lit by filament lanterns powered by micro-turbines, the glow softened by layers of salt glass. The whale people held their stories in song, braiding tales of storms and migrations with the hum of wind organs. Children learned knotcraft before they learned arithmetic, for one loose hitch could mean a plummet through 8,000 meters of nothing. Yet every song carried a sour afternote, the hunters. Since the syndicate privatized the very notion of water, corporate skiffs prowled the exosphere, their graphite hulls shaped like spearheads, their crews armored in condensation suits. They called themselves reclamation auditors, but to the whale tribes they were butchers. Capturing a single sky whale meant draining its reservoirs, injecting buoyancy poisons, letting the corpse fall, and then bottling the plundered atmosphere to sell, glossy and rationed, to subterranean enclaves. Older villagers recited the names of whales that never returned from foraging arcs: Halcyon, Rasivu, Pale Drum. Children who asked what happened fell quiet at the adult's silence. The hunters were not creatures of myth. Their searchlights sometimes sliced the night, searching for the faint luminescence of algae farms. When one appeared, families doused lamps, covered singing vents with hide panels, and prayed the wind would mask their scent. Siyun's flotilla numbered 7 whales, loosely bound by rope bridges stretched between soft, quivering hides. Each whale carried perhaps 100 souls, a fraction of humanity's final diaspora. Yet within that sparse arc of living flesh thrived languages, rituals, disputes, and love. Lyra grew into an apprentice rigger, nimble-fingered, her hair cropped short to keep from tangling in winches. On the day she turned 17, the elder Hob pressed a spool of glittering conductor wire into her palm. "You'll string the next turbine line," he said, a benediction as precious as gold. She slung her tool belt and climbed the ladder of bone stanchions until she stood beneath the whale's gargantuan throat. Far ahead, a cloud bank boiled like a bruised sea. Siyun angled upward, mouth open, filtering mist. Vapor gusted around Lyra in warm waves, speckling her goggles. She felt invincible. Then the hunter beacon cut through twilight, a cone of white radiance that washed over Siyun's flank and haloed Lyra in silhouette. Sirens wailed from wind organs, repurposed as alarms. "Skiffs!" someone shouted. The word cracked like gunfire. Lyra clipped her tether line to a dorsal hook and slid toward the central net square, where elders convened during emergencies. The belly shook as Siyun pulsed vents, trying to gain altitude. But skiffs were fast, thrumming on anti-grav fields derived from the same piezoelectric principles that kept the whales afloat. Two spearheads swung into view, black skins bristling with harpoons festooned with conduit cables, the Syndicate's patented umbilical taps. If even one struck home, it would siphon water faster than Siyun could filtrate, leaving the whale gasping and heavy. Chief Weaver Orin took command, his beard whipping like a banner. "Break bridges," he ordered. "Scatter the herd." Riggers leapt to cut ropes, linking Siyun to her siblings. Lyra's knife bit through polymer braid. Sparks arced as conductive filaments snapped. Immediately, the other whales banked away, their undersides vanishing into cloud thickets as luminous blurs. Siyun, pregnant with a season's worth of water, remained the juiciest target. A harpoon launched, trailing glimmering cable. The tip hammered into blubber meters from Lyra, drilling until its anchors spread like steel petals. She smelled cauterized flesh. Siyun bellowed, a sound deeper than thunder. Crew scampered to hack the shaft free, but fluid already gushed, captured by siphon bellows on the skiff. Lyra saw the cables coupling. If it could be severed before transfer pumps fully primed, loss might be minimal. Without waiting for orders, she clambered down, boots sliding over mucous membranes, slick with condensation. She uncoiled the conductor wire Hobb had gifted, looped it around the harpoon line, and clipped the other end to a turbine junction box. Electricity stored in microcapacitors scorched through the wire, leapt across the wetted coupling, and flash-fused metal. The harpoon head exploded outward, like a steel flower, severing the siphon. Vaporized alloy splattered Lyra's sleeve, but the skiff had more barbs, 2 additional shafts already arced toward the flank. Suddenly, a second alarm rang, this one from within. "Stowaway." Lyra turned. A figure in mat armor clung to a cargo net, climbing up from the whale's throat vents. Syndicate infiltrators often boarded during close-range strikes, planting transponders to track herds. The intruder directed a pulse rifle toward the riggers, forcing them back. Lyra felt heat bloom across her cheek as a warning bolt sizzled by. The infiltrator reached the ridge walkway, studying junction boxes, probably searching for Siyun's sensory core to sabotage her equilibrium. Orin grappled the attacker. They tussled at the edge of a brine pond, the water trembling with each whale shudder. Lyra sprinted toward them, but armor trumped age. The infiltrator drove Orin to his knees. Rifle muzzle pressed against the chief's temple. Breathless fury flooded Lyra. She yanked a tension release. The panel under the infiltrator's boots dropped away, dumping both combatants into knee-deep water. The rifle detonated on impact, shorting in the saline. Orin surfaced, sputtering. The armored figure floundered, suit circuits frying. Lyra and 2 riggers hauled Orin up. The infiltrator sank, weight of composite gear, dragging them into the pond's umbral depth. Above, the skiffs regrouped, wary after the severed harpoon, but unwilling to abandon prize. They began herding Siyun downward, firing concussive charges into the haze below, shaping pressure cells that nudged the whale like invisible cattle prods. Each blast jarred the village, pottery shattered, algae rigs tore free. The air grew distinctly heavier. Lower altitude meant lower vapor density, and Siyun's buoyancy sacks would soon fail. Emergency protocol dictated evacuation into gliders slung under rib struts. But the nearest safe cloudland was hours away, and descent would expose them to capture. Lyra's mind raced. The skiff's main vulnerability was their dependence on static charge diffusers that balanced gravitational flux. Disable a diffuser, and its craft would spiral. But doing so required proximity. She thought of the children huddled in cistern shelters, of Siyun's moan reverberating through bone and air, of water, the last holy element, about to be bottled for profit. She clipped 3 microturbines to her belt, grabbed a coil of live wire, and hooked her harness to a sky-kite winch. "I'll jump," she told Hob, who had arrived, limping. His eyes widened. "You'll never reach the diffuser." "Maybe not, but if I can get their attention, give Siyun time to climb." Hob clasped her shoulders. "Wind guard you." He pressed a flare puck into her palm and yanked the kite release. The canopy billowed, snatching Lyra into a screaming downdraft. She angled toward the nearest skiff, a mat wedge prowling parallel to Siyun's flank. Its railgunners spotted her too late. The craft expected whales, not humans, to fight back. Lyra steered with body weight, feeling her stomach lurch as she cut across the skiff's dorsal slipstream. She slammed hard onto the hull, magnetic boots switch-clamping. Wind howled. At such range, she could see her own reflection in the pilot's canopy. Wide eyes, windburned skin, resolve gleaming. A gunner emerged, pointing a flechette pistol. Lyra thumbed the flare puck. Coruscating magnesium blinded her pursuer as she ducked beneath a sensor vane. She scrambled to the diffuser array, a cluster of chrome petals humming with bottled lightning. She rammed turbine blades into the spinning corona, bridging circuits. Shafts ground. Arcs danced like blue dragons across the casing. She kicked free moments before the entire assembly combusted. The skiff lurched, nose tipping. Gravity reclaimed her. She fell through chaotic air, flailing for kite toggles. Canvas snapped open, but half the ribs were charred. The kite spun, shedding altitude fast. At 600 meters above Siyun's back, she cut loose, trusting inertia to carry her to a cargo gantry protruding like a broken rib. Fingers brushed hemp, slipped, found purchase. She dangled, cursing, then hauled herself onto the platform. Pain spiked in her ankle, yet she grinned. Behind her, the crippled skiff spiraled, smoke trailing, before detonating in a sunburst that lit the underside of nearby clouds. The remaining hunter craft hesitated, scanning for new threats. Siyun seized that pause, venting stored helium. With a seismic chuff, the whale surged upward, thrashing tail fins that dwarfed any airplane. Lyra braced as vertical acceleration pressed her to the deck. Riggers chopped loose burning nets, doused flames with spray foam cannons, rigged from repurposed irrigation pumps. As altitude climbed, air chilled. Ice crystals glittered in Siyun's wake. The intact skiff, deprived of its wingman, fell behind. Eventually, its silhouette merged with the smog horizon. Night settled. Whale song drifted across the void, Siyun calling to the sister herd, which answered faintly from leagues away. The battle's wreckage still glowed, falling stars marking the path of destruction. Crew gathered near the brine pond, where Oren lay wrapped in insulating blankets. He coughed, still breathing. Hob carried a lamp to Lyra, who sat with ankle bound by Franz. "You disobeyed every protocol," he said, voice gruff, but wet with pride. She studied the pond's dark surface, imagining the armored infiltrator entombed beneath. He saw no other way. "You forged a new way," he corrected. "That is what keeps us alive." In the following days, the flotilla regrouped. The whales convened within a storm well, where vapor density maximized harvest, gliding along cyclonic currents that no skiff dared enter. Engineers patched holes in Siyun's hide with biolume bandage nets. Water levels recovered sluggishly, but the core damage proved superficial. Yet a deeper wound festered among the people, the realization that the syndicate would escalate. The infiltrator carried a beacon set to broadcast once suit vitals terminated. Hunters now had Siyun's precise telemetry. Staying within familiar routes risked an ambush with capital cruisers. During council, Oren, propped on a cane, voiced the only plausible path. Exile into the polar auroras, where magnetic storms fried navigation arrays but offered whales supercharged vapor fields. Survival there was uncertain. Staying meant certain slaughter. Debate raged. Some argued for splitting villages, scattering risk. Others for appealing to subterranean enclaves, exchanging a share of water for protection. Lyra listened, clutching her now battered kite frame, remembering how the skiff fell. Proof that syndicate might was not invincible. When her turn came, she rose. "We must carry the hunt to them," she said, surprising herself. "Not with harpoons, but with truth. They shackle the planet's last water supply. Let all enclaves see that sky whales live, that we are caretakers, not poachers. Let them taste water unpriced." Murmurs rippled. Idealism felt thin against cold wind. Then Hobb stepped beside her. "I watched a child plug a whale wound with wire and lightning. She is right. Darkness persists because no one sees above the smoke." One by one, others nodded. A plan germinated. They would dive toward lower tiers where scavenger balloons floated, trade algae glass for broadcast equipment, then release footage of Siyun nurturing cloud nurseries, a spectacle of marvels hidden for decades. If enclaves understood the syndicate's brutality, sanctuaries might rebel, or at least refuse to buy bloodwater. To enact that, they needed a safe passage corridor. Lyra proposed using the very transponder the infiltrator carried. Divers recovered the beacon from the pond, its casing warped, but core intact. By spoofing telemetry, they could project false routes, sending syndicate fleets chasing phantoms, while whales glided elsewhere. Riggers and tinkerers set to work, soldering circuits in makeshift labs suspended over roaring vents. Lyra, ankle mending, oversaw wiring, her conductor spool nearly spent, but her resolve replenished. Weeks passed. The flotilla rehearsed silent maneuvers, teaching children to bundle lanterns, synchronizing whales through ultrasound whistles. They painted hulls with diffraction ink that bent searchlights. On the eve of departure, storm clouds boiled scarlet from refracted sunset. Lyra stood atop Siyun's dorsal ridge, hand pressed to warm flesh. She felt the whale's mind, not in words, but in rhythmic pulses, an ancient patience that dwarfed human ambition. "We'll keep you safe," she whispered, unsure who protected whom. They launched at midnight, fins sliced through strata heavy with static. The whales dove until smog stung nostrils, and broken skyscrapers pierced cloudscapes like mausoleum spires. Balloons bobbed here, occupied by free traders and oxygen rustlers. Negotiations were swift. One sip of pure sky water stilled skepticism. Cameras and amplifiers changed hands. By dawn, the flotilla ascended again, dragging behind them a lattice of broadcast dishes angled at planetary relays. Transmission began with a low chord of whale song, followed by panoramic footage. Infants splashing in sapphire ponds across breathing flesh, harvesters tending algae spirals, hunters' harpoons slamming into living muscle. Across bunker screens and gilded boardrooms, in slums where ration lines coiled for miles, people saw. Many wept. Water is memory, and memories awakened. Riots sparked. Corporate offices were stormed. Syndicate stocks crashed like meteors. Retaliation came swift. A dreadnought lifted from the equatorial dry port, bristling with rail batteries capable of shredding megafauna. Yet every missile requires aim, and now Data was a battlefield owned by insurgent theater. Spoofed transponders painted dozens of migrating herds. False positives filled radar. The dreadnought wandered blind, burning fuel, crew paralyzed by mutiny as conscripts refused to slaughter creatures they had just witnessed cradle humanity. During those tumultuous weeks, Lyra led scout teams along the fringes of auroral storms, mapping safe vapor tunnels. On one excursion, she encountered Flotsam from the crippled skiff, a fragment of armor with her own electrical scorch mark. She kept it as a reminder. Resistance leaves scars, proof of contact between hope and oppression. When at last the whales entered polar dusk, curtains of green fire rippled above. Vapor saturated to a degree even Siyun had never tasted. She opened mouth wide, exhaling plumes that froze into opalescent crystals, drifting like flower petals. Villagers cheered, paragliding through glitter. For the first time since the collapse, cloud rain fell naturally. It pattered across the whale bellies, over hammocks, over Lyra's upturned face, cold, clean, endless. Settlements below would feel the drip in coming weeks, gentle, persistent, seeding life where there had been none. Whether Syndicate survived the uprising mattered less than this falling water. Lyra tightened her harness, inhaled petrichor, and looked toward a horizon aflame with dawn. The sky was a vast, wounded ocean, but within its wounds grew songs, wires, courage, and whales. Always the whales, carrying villages upon their fathomless backs, teaching a remnant species that to cling is not enough. One must also rise, and rising, learn to let the rain fall freely once more.